Questions.
So I had some question about the tweet that you posted. Like when it goes like this: when something that seems negative is happening, pay especially close attention and hold to the observing center. Watch as its teaching function unfolds. Learning this way, you become immune to misfortune.
Right. Okay. Good. 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 Thank you. And questions about the pulse are always great. So this life is just a series of learn. I mean, like, it's always teaching. That's the whole. I mean, that's really what life is learning, learning, learning. Now, the message is not always what we want to hear, right? And so sometimes
Yeah.
things appear very negative, or they feel like they're bad news, or they're misfortune, right? And those are very useful because it's then that you can get the most mileage out of holding to your center, right? The observing center, and then watching this negativity like just play out, right? And then you can also feel it in your body. You can feel yourself like feel hopeless and helpless, like especially like giving up, right? And you just feel like no matter what you do, it's never going to work. That the world is never going to work for you, and failure is all that's written there, and no one really cares, and you'll never be a success, and you'll never get ahead, and what's ahead is just despair and just bad news. And so that's when it's really really important to have done some preliminary work, so you can hold to your center, right? And then from there you can observe the thoughts go by and the feelings go by, right? So if depending on where you are in your progress, you can focus on the body, and you can just feel your they call it your heart sinking, right? You can feel your heart sink, and you can feel your or some people feel tense, right? Some people feel anxious, and that you got to let go of because you can't concentrate that way. But just feel the despair, just feel it. It's just like, oh God. And you can feel that and they also call it like a dark cloud, and it's kind of like that, but more. It's heavier than that. And so, someone who talked about this really well was Eckhart Tolle, right? When he was talking about being so depressed that he wanted to kill himself, and
Yeah.
then he wondered, well, wait a minute, who is it that's observing? Who's watching this? Who is it that wants to kill themselves? If I'm, who am I if I'm
Yeah.
watching the thoughts that about wanting to kill myself? He describes it much better than I do. But the point is that, and then boom, he realized one day, like, and this is how it works too. All of a sudden, one day, you realize there's a space, a big space, huge space between your thoughts and you, and even between your bodily sensations and you. And that may not happen all of a sudden. It can happen gradually, but it can happen every day that you feel despair. Because every day that you feel despair, sooner or later it's going to lift. Maybe you go for a walk, maybe you go for a run, maybe you just sit there and you think about something else, and all of a sudden you're not as depressed anymore. You don't have to have the same despair, and you notice that your thoughts change, right? Or the other way around, your thoughts change, and then you realize, hey, I don't feel as bad. And so this is a gradual process, and it's a painful process. I'm not minimizing that, but gradually it dawns on you that you are not your thoughts. You are not the sensations in your body. You are not your desires and your wants and your fears and your hopes. You're something altogether different. Uh, I saw something recently. You're not a human being. You're a human. You're a being. Period. Right. That's a little bit esoteric, but the point is that this is the whole reason why you need to create the space between you and your thoughts and you and your bodily sensations. That's the whole point. So follow up questions. Good.
had this question. So, is this happening because I have two versions of I?
Oh, I'm
One
sorry. I'm
is
sorry to
like,
interrupt you, but there's one other point that's really, really important. The point is don't fight. Don't fight it. Watch it.
okay,
Okay, that's a huge difference. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, and we'll get right back to that. But the point is that you're not there to fight it, because if you, by fighting it, you just make it worse and you deplete yourself. Watch it, observe it, study it. Say, oh wow, when I feel this bad, my heart sinks, my breath, gets shallow, or my ears feel long, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is, but what matters is the attitude, the stance of, now you're observing, now you're studying, now you're trying to see what's there, as opposed to just assuming you know what's there. All right, so I'm sorry I left that part out. Go ahead.
yeah. So I was like, yeah, it's like I have like two versions of me. One is the actual me, and the another one is my image of me, what it should do, what it like it has
Very good.
beliefs for me to be there. And does this despair come
Repeat those
because
again.
that
Let's
second
let's repeat
image of
those.
me?
You say there's two U's. I'd say there's more, but
Yeah.
let's just let's hear them again. What were they?
One is the true me that experiences things, like doesn't, I don't know, it is what it is, I guess.
Okay. All right.
And
Good.
then,
The true you,
the,
essential you, the real you, something like that.
yeah,
Okay. Good. Good.
yes.
Good. And then
And
what's the other
then
one?
there is an image of me, like
Correct.
people say, right? I want to explore myself, or I want to
Okay.
discover myself, but I don't know whether that can be discovered via my mind at all, because
Well.
I
Okay.
think we
So,
discussed that. Yeah.
all right. So then, what's the question? Because this is great. This is good. The true you, and then the
My
image of
question,
you.
yeah. So my question is, does this feelings of despair come because I am afraid of losing my image?
Excellent.
Or
Does it? But see, once again, but okay. As much as I love that, that you're trying to understand why it happens. The more important thing, and this is counterintuitive, is just to see what happens, because we can go on for a very, very, very long time about why each human being, and all human beings, this is our human situation, right? We suffer because we think, oh, we're going to fail. We're failures. We're not loved. We're not cared about. We're not going to succeed. We're da 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 da. And so it's very, very, very tempting to try and understand why that is. And in psychoanalysis, for example, you can spend literally decades trying to figure out why that is. But the great discovery of the 20th and 21st centuries is that that's not what's important. What's important is to understand what it is. All right? And so if you understand that there is an essential you, a true you, an actual you, a you that these things happen to, right? As Borges puts it, right? The one they call, and then there's an image, there's a difference between you and the image of you, right? Which is, in Borges' terms, is he calls it the one they call Borges, right? Have you read Borges and Me, or Borges and
no,
I?
no.
Okay, that's a one-page essay by Jorge Luis Borges. I strongly recommend that you read it straight away. It's one
Okay.
page, all right?
Yeah.
It's all over the internet, as it should be. Okay, so let's just talk about a generic image of you. Now, where could that image? First of all, what is that image? Well, it's an image of. Is it not you? An image of you as you think things
I
should
would,
be?
I would argue it's like low resolution version of the true me. Like,
Yeah, you might, but see, but we still haven't answered the question. That image of you is made up of parts. I'm gonna be. I've got to be rich. I've got to be have a nice woman. I've got to be admired. I've got to be have a nice car or a nice house or live in a great country or something like that. It's all these other components, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so those are made of what?
Thoughts.
Exactly. And
You can say
where could those thoughts have come from? Just in general, where could they have come from? I need to be thin, or I need to be muscular, you know, or I need to have bigger breasts or smaller hips or bigger hips or whatever, where do these thoughts come from?
from past or
Right, they're
something
conditioned.
implanted in them.
They're conditioned.
Yeah, condition. Yeah.
And everyone has them. The only difference is that depending on which part of the world you're in, you're conditioned differently, right?
Yeah.
In some parts of the world, it's you need to have a big butt, right? If you're a woman, let's say. In other parts of the world, you need to have a small butt, and so it's all arbitrary. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah.
So good. So we have this image of you, which is made of these pieces, and each of these pieces comes from somewhere. But you've said that they're thought, but there's others as well. There's sensations, right? Which, like, for right now, you have sensations in your body. And if you have pain, like you've got cancer or something like that, and you've got pain in your gut, that's there too, right? And so then
Yeah.
there's memories, and then there's imagination about the future, right? Oh my God, I'll
Isn't that
never
just
get this.
thoughts?
Go ahead.
Isn't that just thoughts? Thoughts
Yes, it
are
is. It is.
always
It is.
about
It is.
future.
It is. So then, can we find that in the image of you? Where's the truth?
I don't know. I don't know.
And see, this is why the search for truth is the only search that's worthy of a man or a woman or whatever, a person. Because unless you know that, what are you doing? You're just wandering around in the either in the desert or the forest or on a ship that's lost at sea. You're at the mercy of whatever comes or doesn't come. And so that's why the search for truth and the search for peace are the same thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if this image of you is what they mean by clinging, right? Attachment. You cling
Yeah.
to an image of you, and let's say you had an image of you as let's say you had an image of yourself as a great strong athlete and soldier, courageous man, right? And you can take on anything, and you're that, and then you get one of your legs blown off in a war.
Yeah.
Now, what's going to happen? You're going to suffer if you hold on to that image of you as an intact, two-legged person, right? And so this is what's meant by attachment in the grossest sense, right? Does that make sense?
So I have one problem with this,
Go
and
ahead.
it's that logically I can see kind of,
Mm-hmm.
but I still keep referring to that image unconsciously. Like I still keep getting afraid that
Of
if
course.
I don't get promoted, then I
Yeah,
will die.
there's been decades of conditioning in this into you, right? You can't get rid of it in a day, and until the time comes when it all drops, right? But so yeah, it takes time. And
So
the
what
other
can
thing
I
that
do?
you have to do is you still have to make it in the world, right? You still have to
Yeah.
put food on the table and a roof over your head.
Yes.
So what's a man to do? Questions, follow up.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask what can one do if they are in this situation?
Well, you're asking a man who really believes that only truth, which is love, right, which is the reality, the only real reality. Yeah, for me and many others, that's the only answer, right? Everything else falls apart. Everything falls apart. And so, what can you do? Well, you can let go of one image of you, and another image will pop up. By the way, And then, but always
That's like
return
your
to the
comfort.
center, always return to the real you. And one day you'll wake up and you'll go, hey, I'm more that essential thing than I am that image now. It's a process for most people. And so you wake up and you realize, well, wait a minute, I'm not, as Eckhart Tolle said, I'm not the suicidal thoughts. I'm not any of the thoughts. I'm not the guy who thought he was going to be a big athlete with two legs. I'm not that. I'm not even, I'm something else. And that something else cannot be hurt. That something else does not need to strive. That something else does not need the approval of others and does not need thought, right? And so what
Yeah,
can you
I
do?
think
Ask the
it's
question again. Ask the question again because it's important, and we want to get to pragmatic answers too, right?
yeah, like yeah. I was just going to ask, like I had similar question to this, like if my negative loops are because of these this false image, if the false image
All images
drops,
are
does
false.
the negative loops also drop?
Yes, and you suffer. And as a matter of fact, some would argue, and I might agree with them, that the whole purpose of that negative loop and the whole purpose of that suffering is so you wake up, it forces you to find the truth. It's like someone who goes to AA because they can't they're suffering so much that they have to turn towards truth, towards God, towards love, right? And so the purpose of that
But
doom loop, that whole thing, right? Maybe you don't know this yet, and I don't lead with this, and nobody. I mean, I didn't say nobody. Uh, it is so common that people find suffering is their path towards realization, towards actualization, or whatever words you want to use. That it's almost a rule. I mean, look at the Buddhists, the Four Noble Truths. What's the first noble truth? Suffering exists.
yeah,
Suffering
yeah,
exists. No one could deny that. Not Descartes, the greatest philosopher, the greatest scientist, the greatest atheist, whatever. They can't deny that suffering exists, right?
yeah,
I mean, you can't prove that you exist. You can't prove that thought exists. I mean, thought's different. I mean, you can't prove that something else exists, but suffering exists, right? So that's the first noble truth. And the second noble truth is that the cause of suffering is clinging or being attached or holding on to concepts or images or ideas or things. It's clinging, attachment. It's grabbing onto a thought, an image. Like, I have to have two legs, right?
wait, I had one question.
Well,
Is
wait.
it
Let's get
like
to the third.
okay,
Okay, but go ahead. But remember, we're only on the second noble truth. Remember, there's four noble truths. Keep
yeah,
going. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, so the question was you said clinging onto a concept. Like
Mm-hmm.
what if you are clinging onto a concept of trigonometry or something? That's true, right?
Yeah,
It's
of
it's
course.
just
Yeah,
the clinging
you need
onto
trigonometry to
concept
do.
of myself.
Go ahead.
So is that problematic if I am clinging to the concept of me? It doesn't matter if I
There's a
cling to
big
the
difference
concept
between a
of trigonometry.
trigonometry concept and a concept of you. Does trigonometry concept cause you to suffer? Does the idea of pi
No.
to create any problems for anybody? Pi, then in the
Yeah.
geometric sense.
Yeah.
The idea of an equilateral triangle, does that hurt anybody?
Maybe if you are having an exam next day and if
Well,
you
an
haven't
equilateral triangle
prepared,
is an equilateral triangle. What's the problem? And you're taking an exam.
yeah, and
Now, see,
maybe you
this is the
don't
ego
do the
throwing up
concept clearly.
obstacles, right? This is the ego like being silly in order to throw up obstacles. We were talking about Four Noble Truths, right? And I'm not saying you're
Yeah,
doing it consciously, but everybody does this unconsciously. And this is why the psychoanalysts are in business, right? Because they could talk about this
yeah,
for decades, right? Say, why do you resist you know, you don't have a problem with the concepts of algebra or calculus, but you have problems with the concepts of the church. You can go on forever and ever and ever and ever. But Yeah, to function in this world, you need certain things like language. And if you're doing engineering, you need math. And if you're doing, you may need geometry and trigonometry, and you need labels if you're going to be a biologist, right? That's not what we're talking about. Besides, you can change those labels. Pluto used to be a planet, remember?
Yeah.
Okay, is that clear?
Yes.
But I mean, so we could spend quite a bit of time asking, we're talking about human suffering, and you want to know whether or not, uh, what did you say, whether, was it trigonometry or something? Symbols like that, clinging to those is what I'm talking about. No, I'm not talking about those things. Besides, you can change them in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not math, but the others, right?
I mean,
Pluto's
it
a
can be
planet
viewed
one
through other
day, and
lens
then
as
a
well.
year later, Pluto's not a planet, right?
Yeah, like I'm just saying, like you can view trigonometric concepts through imaginary numbers as well. So it's there. It's the reality. It's just that to make things simple for our mind, we have labels.
What's the straightest distance between two lines? I mean, 2 points. The shortest distance between 2 points.
The line connecting them,
What kind of line?
the straight line,
Yeah.
line.
Now, so I believed that all my life, right? And then I found out it was wrong when I'm talking about this earth, right? And so
Yeah.
when I learned that it was wrong, I could drop that concept, and I didn't suffer that much. I mean, I wasn't clinging to that. But if you cling to that, let's say you're sailing a ship from point A to point B on the earth, right? And you want to get there as quickly as possible, or you're flying an airplane and you want to get from point A to point B in the airplane. If you go in a straight line, they'll fire you, right? And so even that, clinging to that notion of the straight line, falls apart. And if you cling to it, you will suffer, right? And so we're getting off into some pretty, esoteric, not esoteric. I mean, it's important to know that on this earth, a straight line is not the shortest way to get between point A and point B. Okay?
Yeah.
So now,
Yes.
follow up, and then we'll go back to the noble truths later. Keep going.
There are no follow-ups after this. We can go to the third noble truth.
Okay. So the first noble truth is that suffering exists. The second noble truth is that the cause of suffering. No, the second noble truth is there's an end to suffering. Or I may have 2 and 3 reversed, right? But so wait a minute. This is pretty radical. They're saying suffering exists. There's an end to suffering. That's either the second or the third noble truth. There's an end to it. It can be ended. I mean, that's what the hell? That's the Buddha just says that, boom, flat out. And he's right. And then the cause of suffering is this clinging and attachment and holding on to things that you shouldn't hold on to because they're not real in the first place. And then the fourth noble truth is the method, right? The path.
Yes.
Is the end of suffering, and it works, right? So there it is. It's spelled out. I mean, the guy was brilliant. I mean, he spelled it out in very simple terms. And yet people want to hold on to their suffering. I'm not sure why. But at a certain point, for many people, the suffering gets to be too much, and they finally just say, I give up. I'm going to get help. Or I'm going to go to the Buddha. I'm going to go to Jesus Christ. I'm going to go to Krishna or to whomever, right? And they say, and every one of these teachers says, look within. And don't get caught up in the outside, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what do they mean by the outside? Well, they mean these external concepts and constructs and notions and ideas that always change and always fall apart. There's nothing made by man, including ideas and thoughts, that doesn't fall apart. Is there? Can you name anything made by man that does not fall apart? Anything.
Except for that thought. Because
Which
that
thought?
falls apart then.
Which thought?
The thought that there are nothing that breaks apart that doesn't break apart.
But see, that thought also falls apart, but you don't know how yet. For that, you need truth. Even that thought falls apart. Thought is made by man, and that's why we're in the trouble we're in, right? To the extent that you would say we're in trouble. We've gotten lost in a labyrinth, lost in a maze, lost in a prison or a torture chamber of our own minds, right? Something like that. Are you following me?
Yeah, but
okay,
at the
good.
same time,
Keep going. Good.
but why do we cling to it?
Because you
Is it
haven't
because
suffered enough yet, obviously.
okay?
When you get to like Eckhart Tolle, right, or God knows how many other people, alcoholics come to mind at the moment, or drug addicts. I mean, not the ones that go to some fancy rehab to get the law off their back. By the way, forced treatment like that rarely works. But people who go there because they genuinely they can't suffer anymore. They've given up. They just say, "I give up," and they surrender. Right? That's what Jesus, and that's what every tradition includes that as well. What does Islam mean? It means submission to the will of God. So to be a slave of truth, to be a slave of God, is to be free, to be a full man or woman or person or whatever. You see? But so the answer to your question is you haven't suffered enough, so keep suffering. And you're proving my point, by the way, that this cycle of suffering is there almost, it looks like it's there, I can't think of any other purpose, to force you to seek truth. Where else are you going to go?
What can I do to make full use of my suffering then?
All right, let's make that into a question, all right?
Yeah,
But don't make it about you. Make it about, because this is what can one do, right?
yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Question.
So, what can one do to make full use of their suffering to realize the truth?
Well, you answered the question in the second half. Ask it again.
What can one do to make full use of the suffering?
Can you give me
How
an
can they?
example from history or from a book or something? Give me an example.
Um,
Not about you personally, but there's plenty of suffering in the history of this world. So, give me an example.
Holocaust.
Okay. Which suffering in particular do you want to talk about? And why? And okay, that's interesting that you would choose that, but okay. What does the Holocaust? Okay, go ahead. What suffering in particular? In that abominable, that horrible thing.
Being worried that you will get caught, or one will get caught and being either thrown to a concentration camp or being worked in a slave labor camp. Just thinking about it.
Well, people
Fear of
did get caught, did go to labor camps, right? Did get murdered. What does that teach you? Or not you. What does that teach?
It doesn't teach anything.
What are you talking about? You just found out that humans are capable of murdering each other. They're quite capable of making a slave out of someone else that you could be made a slave of, right? How can you say it doesn't teach anything? So now what's the problem? It teaches that humans can be horrible, worse than beasts to one another. And they can murder one another and they can make slaves out of one another. So I don't know how it doesn't teach that. How can you say it doesn't teach that?
I thought those were obvious, but yeah.
Well, it's obvious, but okay, now follow-up question, please.
Yeah. So if
If they're obvious,
someone
why'd you
is,
use the example then? Use an example that you think is going to be useful, right? I don't want platitudes. We're trying to get to a solution here, right?
yeah, okay, let me think of some other scenario. Like suppose if one's son or daughter die in an accident,
What does that teach someone?
that life is life doesn't care.
How about you need to protect your children, right? You need to keep them away from cars. You need to, you have to be careful. There's a lot of things that teaches.
But there's a limit to that. Like I don't think we can predict what can happen to one's children.
There you go. There's something else you learned, right? You can't predict. You can't even predict what's going to happen to you, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what does that teach?
To be afraid of it, or
Afraid of what?
death, that you will die in
No, how about
second.
afraid of getting hit by a car? So you don't walk out into the traffic, right?
That will make you not leave your house at all.
Wait a minute. Am I talking to someone rational here? I mean, you know that a plane. Do you ever fly in an airplane? Do people fly in airplanes?
Yeah,
Do they know that airplanes crash?
they do.
Okay, so
But
but what?
but the moment they go out, if they are near a road, there is always some possibility that they may get hit by a car.
And so does that mean that we should all stay in our houses and never go out? Or am I talking to a crazy person here?
Or if you don't want to get hit by a car,
Well, then you'll get asphyxiated by carbon monoxide. Come on. Or the house will burn down. Or there'll be an earthquake, or there'll be a tornado. What are you talking about?
I'm just talking about that there are various possible scenarios that can happen.
Correct. Now,
that
how do
one
you
can
choose
never
which one you're
predict.
going to be petrified of?
You don't. And anything can happen.
There you go. Good.
That's the
Anything
scary
can
part.
happen to the body and to your loved ones and to you. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So now you've learned something, right? There's no security, there's no safety on this planet, right? For the body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Now what are you going to do with that information? By the way, that's growing up, sweetheart. I mean, sweetheart.
Not that time, but
Yeah, this is growing up. That's just growing up, my friend.
yeah, that's but I
Right?
don't know. Then only thing one can do is not to cling on to this one's life. Like
No,
accept
to
that
one's
if
body.
that
One to
happens,
one's
then
body.
happens.
You can't. Your body's already announced its departure. You're gonna die. I'm gonna die. You're gonna die. Everyone you know is gonna die. Right? What does that teach?
Nothing is permanent.
There you go. Good. So why are you worried about? You're gonna die.
I'm just worried about that nothingness that would come afterwards.
First of all, if it were nothingness, why would you worry?
Because I can't do anything and it feels
But you
suffocating.
obviously you can't do anything. You are just an image. You're just in a dream. You're a dream character. All dream characters disappear. Right? You can't see that yet, right?
And
You can't do anything in this world because this world is a dream world, right? You can't protect yourself. You can't have world peace. You can't bring peace to India or to the United States. You can't you can't do. What are you talking about? You're living in a
can I
dream world, and I'm asking, and what this is about is waking up. And some people need fear. Some people need suffering. Some people need a knock on the head. Some people need a near-death experience. Some people need, horrible to say, but they lose a child and then they wake up, or they get suicidal and the gun's right there and they think, well, wait a minute, before I pull the trigger, right? And then some people pull the trigger too.
Yeah.
So what's your concern now? You're afraid you're going to die. You're going to die.
Yeah. It's just that I will die earlier.
Huh?
But no, nothing.
Do you know when you're going to die?
No.
Do you know when anybody's going to die?
No.
So now you know the rules, okay? They're getting closer to truth here. These are the rules.
I think I remember you discussing about that Sufi saying, going to the bed, thinking about death and waking up that this won't last forever. Or was it the other way around?
The reality is you're not going to die. Not you, remember we started at the beginning, you said there was a true you and then said there was an image you, right? At the moment right now you're identifying with the image you. That image you most certainly is going to die. It's going to fall apart. It's just a set of ideas, right? You, the actual you, there's no way you can die. You're not made of falsehood. You're not made of ideas. You're not constructed by the mind. You're the true you, the essence you, the one that's watching these thoughts of the Holocaust, thoughts of people dying, thoughts of people getting run over or whatever, da, da, da. The one that's watching all those things is who I'm speaking to. And that one has no fear at all because nothing on this earth can touch it. Right? And so every spiritual teacher, every single one, all their whole function is getting people to see that foundational truth. The kingdom of God is within you. He who believes in me has eternal life, right? Or the Taoists talk about immortality, or the Buddhists talk about the Buddha nature. It doesn't come and go. The Dharmakaya. The Hindus have their own way of describing it. I don't speak enough Sanskrit, right? And so what's the problem here? The problem is you're holding on to your suffering. You're holding on to the image. You're holding on to your way of doing things. And you keep doing it over and over and over. So, well, what I'm going to do is to escape this, I'm going to go play a video game, right? Or I'm going to stuff my face. Or I'm going to, look at some porn, whatever. You keep doing that, it's not going to work. It's just going to get worse. And sooner or later, you either die not knowing who you were, which to me is a tragedy, or you grow up, you put your feet on the ground and you say, hey, I'm a grown man. I'm not a little kid. I've got to face reality. And reality says that this that I've been playing around with for most of my life is false. And it causes suffering. And it's not only my suffering, but the suffering of others. And it causes wars and it causes horrible things, holocausts and pogroms and bioweapons and all kinds of crap. And then you say, well, wait a minute. Maybe I didn't want to believe these guys were telling the truth. Maybe there is something to this notion that I have to do some self-searching. I have to investigate. I have to know who and what I really am. Maybe I have to actually do something I don't want to do for a while in order to get to the truth. And then join the crowd of people that are peaceful, that are fine. Is there a problem? Am I missing something here?
No.
So the reason for your suffering is to lead you to truth. The reason you keep doing it is because you haven't grown up enough to realize that there's an end to that suffering. Or you must enjoy it, or you just want to keep playing your video games, or you want to keep jerking off to porn, or whatever else kids do these days. Not just kids, adults, or race cars, or chase women, or go to prostitutes, or eat food or booze or whatever, but sooner or later, you have to grow up. Now, how long it takes, who knows? Some people never wake up. to their essential
With
nature.
that definition, do most of the people even grow up? I don't know.
I think it depends on the culture and the time and the epoch. But there's a beautiful quote by Borges where he says it's in his new Refutation of Time, and he says he talks about subman, and he says his fate, as is the fate of all men, is to have lived in bad times. And then when you think about it in history, there's never been a good time. Now, if you really think about it, I mean, Jesus noted it, Buddha noted it, Muhammad noted it, you'll note it. I mean, look, I mean, so if you think about it, there's never been, and also he wrote that in 1967. You know. So yeah, just keep suffering as part of the dream. But you know, sooner or later, people get tired of nightmares and they get tired of bad dreams, and they wake up and they go, "Oh, all of that was not really necessary, was it?" And then you just want to see other people suffering. You want to try and help them out. It's not that complicated. Okay, sir. Do you have any follow-up questions? I'm sorry if I got agitated there a bit, but I, you know, it's hard when people throw in trigonometry in the middle of the Four Noble Truths. Okay. Any follow-up questions? Follow-up questions?
Not to this, but
Go ahead.
a different question.
All right.
So it's like,
Question.
so in past few videos, you were talking about attunement with the way.
Yes.
So does it feel like whatever, like do whatever one can do and accept whatever the result? Is that what it means to be attuned with the way? Or is that just one way to do it?
That might be the first. That might be a step in the right direction, sort of ish, but that's not the attuning with the way. No. In the way, there's no doing. There's no need to do. It's like, does a tree? Is there effort for the tree to sprout leaves in the spring, or for it to drop it in the falls? Are the birds making an effort when they go and you know, eat worms out of the ground, right? Or is the grass making an effort to grow? So in according with the way, it's not doing, right? There's no need for you to get your mind involved in it and all this crazy stuff that we do with our minds. It's a great question, by the way. But let's hear what your idea was, because that could be a step in the right direction. Let's hear it one more time. State it again.
Yeah, so this basically makes me think like when one applies effort, it means they have something in mind that they want to achieve, something positive.
No. Does your heart make effort to beat?
No.
Does your intestines make effort to contract? You know, or your lungs make effort to breathe? Or birds make effort to fly? No. See, that's the whole point. You're all wrapped up in the mind, right? And that's the whole beauty of the way. With the way, the beauty of the way, the beauty of the Tao, the I Ching, and the beauty of the Tao, period. That's why it's been around as long as mankind. Longer, obviously. But it's that you leave off, you forget all this mental crap. You just watch and you just be. And then when you're hungry, you'll eat. When you're tired, you'll sleep. And you only get into trouble when you get mixed up with ideas and with concepts and constructs and politics and society and other people. You know, yeah, there's no trying in the Tao. That's why that's one of the reasons why it's treasured the way it is. I mean, what does trying do after? I mean, but see, the thing is, to get rid of the mind, to get rid of the crapola of thought and all these crazy ideas you have about how reality is, but it's just mental reality. That takes effort in the beginning, because it's like taking the garbage out, but you put the garbage in, right? Or you keep the garbage in, so that takes some effort. But once that's cleared away, then you can just be, right? Just be. Does it take effort for the wind to blow? Or for the moon to wax and wane, or for the tides? Is there any effort involved? It's a silly question. It's like asking the moon, how hard do you try to reflect the light of the sun?
So effort is only put when one tries to contrive on something, right?
Very good. Close. A lot closer. Contrivance is fatal, always. I mean, even in mundane things, don't contrive. Look, watch what these politicians do to themselves. Look what Hitler and the Nazis did to themselves. Yeah, so don't contrive. And do unto others. That was Jesus' commandment, to treat the other as yourself, right? Love one another. And if you start contriving, if you start being clever, like the Democrats or the Republicans or the who knows what, then you're going to get into trouble. It's just the way things are. And so name somebody from the 14th century that we even remember. And there were some, people who thought they were the I don't want to curse, but the dog. People who thought, I'm the most important thing. I'm the most important, influential, richest, powerful man on earth, right? And what's his name? We don't know. There's no name, right? We've picked a few out, but we didn't even know who they were, really. So no one's going to know his false. No one knows it right now. Who really understands you?
No one except me.
And you don't understand you, so where does that leave us, man? We got to go someplace else, you see. Who can really, 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 really understand another person? I mean, we can certainly empathize and be with people and understand them in a certain way that shows that we have a common heart, and a common condition. But in terms of knowing the details of an intricate mind, right? Yeah. Not going to happen. And then people make up an image. It's like Elon, right? They make up stuff in the newspaper, and people believe that, right? And their image of Elon has about as much to do with Elon as nothing, right? And that happens always, right? Same thing's true for Biden, or true for Trump, or true for anybody. I mean, I didn't want to bring those guys. Shouldn't have brought those guys up. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's go back. What was the way you phrased the question, though, had some concrete things, and I said they were a step in the right direction. I want to get them nailed down. What were they?
Yeah, so let me repeat the question. It's like when you say to be in attune with the way,
right?
Is it like do whatever one can do, like
no,
the best they can do, and accept whatever the result?
No, that's your mind trying to torture a meaning out of it. No, you don't have to do everything you can do, right? You just do what needs to be done. Now, at your stage, at your phase of life, you're damn right that you need to do everything you can do. You need to work your ass off. Yeah, absolutely. At your stage, until you get free of this horrible prison you're in, right? This doom cycle, right? In order to get free of that, that's going to take some work. Because you built the bars. Now you got to take the bars down, and that's going to take some work. You're going to have to study. You're going to have to contemplate. You're going to have to reflect. You're going to have to be honest with yourself. You're going to have to grow up. Welcome to the world. That's the purpose of this world, right? What other purpose is there? Think about it. Why would God come down here and take human form?
I don't know.
Well, find out. Find out, but it can't be because it's all roses and sunshine with our beautiful minds, right? And we'll talk about AI next time, maybe. All right?
Yep, yes.
All right. Anything else before we stop?
No.
All right. Take good care, my friend.
Yep.
All right.